is CBS Eye on the World with John Batchelor. Here's John Batchelor.
This is CBS Eye on the World. I'm John Batchelor, and I welcome Henry Kerr for The Economist magazine, the economics editor, to look at the word shortages. We see it now in East Asia. China is short of energy sources, especially coal. We see it in the supply lines in California, the stack up of container ships trying to get goods on empty shelves before Christmas holiday shopping starts, which is now. And we especially see it in Europe, in the UK, and on the continent of Europe, having to do with energy, especially natural gas. Henry, a very good evening to you. Thank you for this. The shortages worldwide, we can find reasons that are immediate. One is the consumers have a lot of cash and they're ready to spend money. Will that ebb anytime soon? We have trillions in our pockets, Henry. Good evening to you.
Good evening. It's great to be with you, John. Yes, I think that it's been a massive factor behind the shortages that stimulus programs by governments have put cash in the pockets of consumers. What this has done especially is to boost the demand for goods globally. There's been this unprecedented demand for goods because people have had lots of money in their pockets and because during the pandemic, people have on the whole been going out less. So American consumption of goods is over 10% above its pre-pandemic trend. And that's hit supply chains that basically weren't prepared for that level of demand in the physical economy, if you like. And that's caused a lot of the backing up in supply chains in factories in East Asia and also in global shipping. And that's the primary cause of the shortage that you're seeing in inflation for everything from tennis shoes to used cars.
Are you seeing the same urge to spend in the UK or in Europe that we're seeing here? People with credit cards, very delighted in shopping in all directions, including on Amazon at night. Do you see the same thing?
So it's not quite as pronounced, and neither has been the resulting inflation. And that's because the stimulus in the UK and in Europe more generally was not quite as aggressive in terms of giving money directly to households, the universal checks that you had in the US. They didn't happen in Europe. However, it has been the case that there has been this big pivot from services spending to goods spending during lockdown, and that has contributed to the backing up of supply chains. And of course, the other factor that's global is the increased demand for digital equipment, for computers, phones, video games consoles, everything that needs microchips. And of course, there's this microchip shortage. Microchips require very long-lived investments to produce, and the world economy just hasn't been prepared for that. And so that's contributed as well.
I confess I'm guilty of that, Henry. When I saw that there was a shortage in chips, I don't have fancy chips in my boxes, but I do have them. And I saw the prices were going up in Amazon, so I ordered one before they were saying, we don't know when this will be back in supply. But let's turn to the other explanation that makes a great deal of sense. It's generally known as protectionism. Translate that for here in recovery. How is protectionism making for shortages?
Well, it's both protectionism and geopolitical conflict. We've got a special report in The Economist this week about how trade policy, which used to be set with the goal of economic efficiency in mind, is now set with all kinds of other goals in mind, from imposing labor standards overseas to green and climate-related goals, and, of course, to punishing your geopolitical foes. And so what we've had in Europe is this shortage of natural gas, a big part of which is being connected to Russian decisions about the amount of gas they supply to Europe. Now, they would dispute that and say they're honoring their contracts, but European gas stockpiles are low, and Russia is the biggest supplier of gas to Europe. And people are speculating that this is because Russia is trying to influence European decisions about gas pipelines. And so these political factors are coming into play. I'd also say that in Britain, Brexit has contributed to the shortages. It has meant that there's a greater labour shortage than there otherwise would have been, because European workers can't as easily come into the UK. And then, of course, this week we've had President Biden's administration announcing that, yes, they will allow companies to apply for exemptions on tariffs from China, but they're still maintaining the tariffs in place. And those tariffs on Chinese imports are currently 19%. If you wanted to ease inflationary pressures, it would be a very easy lever to pull for the White House to reduce those tariffs. But of course, they're caught up in all kinds of geopolitical and political goals. And so that's not happening. And so protectionism and geopolitics are contributing to the shortages we're seeing at the moment in the global economy. I
want to focus on Vladimir Putin and an early response from the Kremlin following the natural gas shortages that are echoed across Europe and into the UK. I believe Mr. Putin or his representative said this wasn't about Russia supplying enough natural gas. This was about the green economy, ignoring the availability of fossil fuels. That blame struck me as particularly useful to Russia. Is it useful elsewhere? Are we seeing green blame for shortages?
We certainly are, and it's not wholly without merit in the sense that the one reason that Europe is short on power at the moment is because the wind didn't blow much over the summer, and so that led to gas stockpiles being run down. And now when it's getting colder, you need even more gas, and so there's a gas shortage. I think governments haven't prepared sufficiently for the intermittency of renewables, and that's especially true in the UK. Which has done very well on shifting over to renewable energy generally, but has relied on gas to make up the difference and to plug the gaps when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine and so on. So there is some truth to that. Of course, that does not mean that you shouldn't be trying to decarbonize your economy, but it means you should be thinking about how to decarbonize your economy in a way that doesn't create massive volatility in prices, that doesn't leave you short of energy, and it doesn't leave you, frankly, vulnerable to this backlash against green policy, where you can say, well, we shouldn't decarbonize the economy because it inevitably causes all these hardships. I don't think that is inevitable, but it has contributed somewhat to the shortages this year.
We also saw panic buying in the UK and some parts of Europe. We certainly had alarm bells ringing in China, because there were people stuck in elevators. The anecdotes you have are many, but it was northeastern China was hit rolling blackouts. And blame shifting, are we looking at a transition, Henry, or is this a pushback against green? Can you tell? Is it an important distinction? With COP26 in weeks, there's reason for a lot of turmoil and blame shifting here.
Yes. I mean, I think it's an opportunity for critics of green policy to say it's having all these adverse effects. And like I said, it's not completely untrue that the two are linked. I mean, in China, some of the rolling blackouts were caused by local provinces complying with carbon reduction targets. It's more, though, to my mind, about the execution of the energy transition being mishandled somewhat or being done in a way that doesn't have sufficient long-term planning around it. And so I don't expect to see an imminent weakening in government's commitment to their green goals. But what you are seeing, for instance, in countries like Italy, is governments reacting to energy shortages by saying we're going to subsidize energy bills to try and reduce the public pressure on governments as a result of expensive energy bills, which are obviously deeply unpopular. And subsidies, of course, run completely contrary to the goal of weaning economies off dirty fuel. Ultimately, you want to be taxing dirty fuel, not subsidizing it. But if you don't have the alternatives in place, then that's going to be politically very difficult. So I'm not sure I see politicians giving up on decarbonization, certainly not ahead of COP, but I think they will be more aware of this risk, given this energy crisis, this risk of a big political backlash if you make energy bills vastly more expensive as quickly as has happened in Europe recently.
Henry Kerr is the economics editor for The Economist magazine. This is CBS Eye on the World. I'm John Batchelor.
Where's my order? Does anyone know how to find my order? How can I find my order? Break free from customer support monotony. Welcome to Intercom, the customer support platform that uses chatbots, shared inboxes, apps, and more. Intercom's business messenger resolves questions that can be answered automatically, so customer support feels less like Groundhog Day and more like help is on the way. Go to intercom.com/support to learn more.